So, hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Marco. I go by mprime, and today I'm gonna talk about Monopoly, the board game. But of course, there's more than that. This talk is about blockchain, human society, the future, everything. And if you're active in the blockchain space, this talk hopefully contain a very simple, like mental model or tool that you can use, and the message that is hopefully important for you. If you're more of a like casual visitor trying to figure out what this whole blockchain fuzz is about, there's something here for you too. And that's because we are going to touch on some of the most amazing and terrifying things that we can do with blockchain. So, just in case you're not familiar with the game of Monopoly, let me summarize it for you in just like 30 seconds. So, the game has a board, and the board represents a city divided into zones. And we have a bunch of players that start with money, and they can basically buy pieces of land and they can build on it. And the objective of the game is to take all the money from everyone else. And you basically need to bankrupt everybody else. And you do this by buying land, building houses and hotels. And there's a strategy component to this, but there's also a luck component. So the initial cards that you get, the dice that you roll, and so on. And the citizens that inhabit your city, they're not even freaking mentioned in the rule book. That's how not important they are. So it is a little bit sad to think of how today's world really resembles a giant game of Monopoly in some ways. And there's many ways that the two mirror each other and resemble each other. So, for example, we grow up being told that there's not enough resources for everyone and we need to fight for them. And this puts us basically in constant competition with one another. We need to compete over money, land, recognition, fame. And just like in Monopoly, in real life, if you play very aggressively, you're probably likely to win. You just have no remorse. You throw everybody else under the bus. That's going to get you very far in some respect. For example, in terms of making money. But you can see the top bar of my browser or what? It is
It's
full
only half of
screen.
your thing. I think we might be seeing both screens even.
You see my other screen.
Yeah, I'm seeing less than half.
So is there a way to fix this?
If you double click your bar, does it make it bigger?
Which bar?
The actual application top, if you double click it, does it maximize to a
No, it's already full screen.
Oh.
So can you see?
Probably by sharing a specific application, not the entire screen.
I cannot. It doesn't give me the option to just share my browser window. Any better?
Much better.
Much better.
Huh. All right. So I was just saying, basically, Monopoly and real life can, like, in some ways, it's sad to think about how well they mirror each other. We need to compete with each other. We're told there's not enough resources for everybody. Another way that they mirror each other and they're similar is that the more money you have, the easiest the game becomes. And finally, that if you give the game enough time, there will be the wealth and resources concentrate in the hands of fewer and fewer mega corporation or people, and you're eventually left with one corporation or one person owning everything and everybody. So I invite you, next time you turn on the news or you hear a politician speak, you can basically apply the Monopoly lens and hear and see what they're saying through the lens of a Monopoly game. And more than that, beyond every conflict that you hear about, beyond every problem, if you basically trace it back, you can think of it as there's a monopoly player behind doing their own thing and playing their own strategy. And these monopoly players, they can be so freaking powerful that they can do things like influence government policy, change laws, like tilt economies, even shift borders. And all of this is to basically tilt the game in their favor and get ahead. And just like in the game of Monopoly, the population that suffers the consequences of their action is barely even considered, especially by the super high-level players. So today I wanted to present to you a different way to play Monopoly, and I call this Ouropoly. And this game is remarkably similar to Monopoly. In fact, it's actually the same exact game. You don't need to change any of the rules to play Ouropoly if you have a Monopoly board. And the only difference between Monopoly and Ouropoly is actually the player's objective. So instead of trying to eliminate each other, the players decide to collaborate and help each other. And together they can basically build a sustainable, prosperous economy for the citizen of the city. So it's important to notice here that there's no need for radical strategies. For example, you don't need to go full-on communist and abolish personal property or burn down the bank. You don't need to go full authoritarian and force everybody to cooperate with violence. There's no need to take the guillotine and the pitchforks out of the storage. So any player that wants to join into the cooperative strategy, they can. Everybody else can do their own thing. There's no need to force anybody. Players are still individuals. They own whatever they own. They make their own decisions. And it's basically a voluntary change of objective. And just by a few players changing their collective strategy, the entire game changes. And it goes from a game of like dominance and destruction to a game of sustainable peace and prosperity for everyone. So if you try to play Ouropoly with your friends, which I recommend, you will learn pretty quickly a couple of surprising things. And the most surprising to me is that if at least some number of players start playing Ouropoly instead of Monopoly, basically it only takes 2 or 3 rounds of the game to win. So after 2 or 3 rounds, it's done. There's no way that anybody's going to go bankrupt. Everyone is happy forever after. So cash is flowing for everyone. Players are happy. They can develop the city however they choose, and hopefully for the good of their citizens. And this is a very interesting exercise because one thing that we learned through it is that scarcity, which was kind of the core mechanic of Monopoly, was actually completely artificial. It was a lie. There's actually plenty of resources to go around, and they're there for us if we just are able to share them nicely and collaborate. So we have Monopoly, we have Ouropoly, same game, but with different strategies, and they lead to very different results. So next, let's try to plug in the blockchain and see how this changes things. Let's start with blockchain Ouropoly. So the game is set up as a regular game of Monopoly, but players declare their intention to collaborate. And in addition to the verbal agreements that they had before, they have access to a trusted blockchain. And they can do things like create smart contracts, create tokens, DAOs, whatever they choose. So under this condition, the game for this player just became a lot easier. So basically, players can encode their alliances in form of contracts, their strategy, their objective, and it's all coded on the blockchain. And basically, you find out that once you did this in collaboration with other players, you already won. So you basically won the game before even rolling the dice for the first time. And this is pretty fantastic. In a sense, this can carry over to the real world. In the game of World Monopoly we're playing, blockchain can be used to do similar amazing things. But unfortunately, good things is not everything that we can do with blockchain. So we need to look at the other side of the coin before celebrating. So let's try to play Monopoly with blockchain. As a reminder, Monopoly is the same as Ouropoly, but the players are like greedy and they want to eliminate each other. And like before, they can do all sorts of things, but now they also have access to a blockchain that they can trust. So there's all sorts of weird, malicious things that you can come up with. And just to say one, you could, for example, toward the beginning of the game, try to raise some capital doing something like an ICO and be like, I'm going to give you my token for some percentage of the profits that I will make from my land. And that might give the other players impression that this is a good investment if you sell it right. And then you could also do things like anonymously pump your token and make it look a lot more valuable than it is. And then keep collecting money from opponents. And then at the right moment, maybe when some of these opponents are already like in difficulty, you can crash your own token price. And you might lose some money, but hopefully other players lose even more. And you can, with something like this, bankrupt a different player. And in this world with blockchain and monopoly player, you can actually do worse things than eliminating player. You can think of financial instruments that basically enslave them financially, and instead of eliminating, you end up leeching on them for the rest of eternity. You control all of their actions. They have no freedom to do any choice, but they're not even dead. They're not even outside of the game. They keep going around the board and keep giving you all of their money. And the possibilities in this scenario are transposed, especially when you are very scary, especially when you transpose them back to the real world and the game of Monopoly. Even scarier situation is when we have actually a mix of player, and some players are playing Monopoly, some player playing Ouropoly, some might switch over time, go back and forth, and we have the blockchain in the mix. And this is actually the closest approximation in this little universe to the world we live in today. So there is an ongoing giant game of Monopoly, and there is a group of people which actually already switched to playing Ouropoly. And under these circumstances, it can get really dangerous because Monopoly player can actually leverage the work done by well-meaning Ouropoly player to build momentum and value and trust around their blockchain product. But then they can just inject a bunch of cash and secretly influence this project, take them over, manipulate them in all sorts of nefarious ways. And then basically whenever they see an opportunity, a DAO that they can exploit, a player that can be corrupted or bought out, they can just go in and like reap destruction. So what I mean to say with all of these examples is hopefully something rather obvious. The blockchain, just like any other technology, is neither good or bad. It definitely can be used to do amazing things. It's giving us instruments, for example, to create universal basic income programs, fund land conservation, water cleanup, public health, public education programs. And now, unlike before, we can do all of these things with just a few clicks in a peer-to-peer fashion without waiting for the governments or the platforms to step in and solve these problems. And this is all very, very great. But with great power, of course, comes great responsibility, and probably there will be also a lot of unintended side effects. So the same technology that can do great things will also be used to do terrible things. And just imagine, take your favorite villain of choice, least favorite villain of choice, whether it's a dictator or Wall Street or Nestle or what have you. It will come a time when they will try to leverage blockchain to benefit their own game of Monopoly. And it is really hard right now to predict how this will happen. But it's pretty easy to predict that it will indeed happen, because this is what happened with pretty much every technology ever. So whether it's agriculture, paper, the steam engine, the internet, Bitcoin, you'll come up with ways that it made our life easier and better. And you will also find plenty of ways that it was used to submit, dominate, kill, destroy, and pollute. Just one example in this list is actually, ironically, the game of Monopoly itself. It was actually created to educate kids about the dangers of indiscriminate capitalism and monopolies. And in the end, it ended up probably doing less for educating kids and more in educating them that this is a dog-eat-dog world and you need to elbow each other in order to survive. So this is just an ironic example of unintended consequences for a technology as simple as a board game. And there's a million other examples, but I hope you get my point that the blockchain, like every other technology, can be used for good and will be used for bad things. It's pretty much only a matter of time before some creative monopoly players find a way to do this. And actually, this already started. I'm a bit fearful that it will get a lot worse in the years to come. So what am I saying here? Are we all doomed? Will Moloch always win? Are we stuck in a game of planetary monopoly with no hope? I don't think so. I am very, very hopeful, and I hope this is a message of hope that I pass to you today. I freaking love the blockchain, but I don't expect it to magically solve all the problems in the world. My hope comes from realizing that in order to change the world, we don't even need to change the rules of the game. And what the future brings is mostly a function of our collective strategy. Together we are strong, and the blockchain can definitely help us and bring us together in ways that were not possible before. So if enough of us start playing Ouropoly rather than playing Monopoly, we can turn this planetary game around. So my final message is the following. If you're involved in blockchain project, whether you're building, funding, or contributing, you might have sometimes some hard choices. And I say this because I face these choices. And this is kind of my mental model for trying to figure out what to do, what not to do. And so I just invite you to stop every once in a while and ask yourself, is this thing that I'm about to do a monopoly move or an Ouropoly move? And of course, it's complicated. Not everything is black and white. Most things are gray. And most decisions are really, really hard. But even just stopping and asking yourself this question might seem like a very trivial and small adjustment. But if enough of us apply this mentality, we are unstoppable. And together we can change the world. This presentation is open source, and I very much invite you to change it and remix it however you like. I found over the last month or so that I was thinking about it, that it's a great presentation to introduce people to blockchain, because if there are people that think, non-technical people that think, oh, blockchain is that thing that you use to buy drugs online, all of a sudden they hear UBI and other things, and they're like, oh, you can do these things with the blockchain? Tell me more. Anyway, presentation is open source, and that's it from me.
Great. Thank you so much, Marco. And thank you for telling us about Monopoly versus Ouropoly. I think that's a perfect play kind of on the donut economics thought process of trying to kind of share and live within our means rather than dominate and control. So thank you very much for sharing that message.